Honey,
Hey,
this,
Kelsey.
Neely, hi. This isn't starting till 7:30.
Are you on a call right now?
No.
Oh,
I don't know why I'm in here. I joined because I thought it was 7, and then I thought I exited, and then suddenly I heard this doo doo, and here you are. Oh, I keep loving an email.
so I am just, signing on in case folks have trouble. I need to
Oh,
change.
that's hilarious.
I need to change my name from Neely, from Electa to Neely. Do you know who's
Hi.
on the
How
phone?
are you?
I'm
Good.
okay. How are you?
Let's catch up. I don't. Given how late it's starting.
Hi, everyone. This is Neely Kelly, the facilitator for the webinar tonight. We're waiting on a few more people, so I'm going to give it another minute or two, and then we'll get started. I have been muting everyone just to keep the background noise and the interference noise to a minimum. And as we're waiting for more people to sign on, if you will look at the bottom of your screen to the chat function, open up the chat box and you can chat to everyone, or you can find someone to send a message to. We'll be using the chat function quite a bit tonight. So I'm going to mute myself. We'll wait a couple more minutes and then get started. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think people will probably still continue to join. But let's jump in. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of what I'm sure are incredibly busy lives to join this, what we hope will be an exciting, inspiring, and informative webinar about local electric bus campaigns in your community. So again, the purpose of this webinar is to inspire folks to start local electric bus campaigns in their community, and more importantly, or as importantly, have the knowledge, tools, and understanding of how to move those forward. My name is Neely Kelly, and I'm the senior organizer for Mothers Out Front, New York, and I am based in Rochester. And I'm thrilled to be here. I've been learning about electric transit for the past, couple of months, and the more I learn about it, the more I recognize how powerful, what the opportunity is for us in our communities to push decision makers to decide to go for electric buses and not the polluting buses that are making our community sick and contributing to climate change. So we have an exciting panel of speakers and presenters this evening. And before we jump in, just a couple of housekeeping items. So we're going to be using the chat function. If you're on the phone, I will, hold on, there we go. Sorry, there was some background noise. So there's a chat function. If you have logged in on the computer, if you move your cursor to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you'll see chat. You just click on that. And we will, because we're up to 38 people on the call, we had close to 60 RSVPs. We're going to be using the chat function instead of trying to speak. I think that would be really difficult to manage. There will be a Q&A section. And if you are on the phone and you are near a computer, or you can send an email, jot down a question, my colleague Lisa Marshall will be monitoring both the chat and checking her email for questions. And her email address is lisa.marshall@mothersoutfront.org. And let's see, if you would please stay muted, because the background noise can get pretty distracting. And I think before I introduce Michelle Romero and move into the Green for All piece to this, I would love for everyone to go to the chat function. Thank you, Lisa. Your email is in the chat box now. If folks would just drop a note in the chat with your name, where you're from, and one outcome you are hoping to leave this webinar tonight. So just introduce yourselves to the rest of us if you are comfortable. You are not obligated by any stretch, but it's an opportunity for you to introduce yourselves, and then for us to really understand what you're hoping to gain from this webinar. And we'll give this another 30 seconds or so, and then I will, Michelle, Fernando, Anna, Michael, Claire is telling someone to be quiet. She can hear me. And another piece of housekeeping, thank you everyone for chiming in. We are recording this webinar, not only the audio and the visual, but also the chat. And so we have 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end, and then some discussions about next steps. And if we don't get to all the questions, we are going to copy them and hopefully get them to you, so people have what they need to get started. Okay, so as folks are introducing themselves, thank you so much again. It is my pleasure to introduce Michelle Romero, the National Director for the Green for All, and an organization that has done an incredible job around electric transit and transitioning our systems of dirty diesel to clean buses. And without further ado, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Millie. Hey, everyone. So I'm talking to you out of my home office here in Sacramento, California, and I'm really excited. So I'm Michelle, and I lead Green for All. We're a national program that was founded by Van Jones 10 years ago. And essentially what we do is work to build an inclusive green economy for everyone by uplifting the voice of people of color in the climate movement, and advocating solutions that bring more work, wealth, and health to communities of color and low-income communities that have been the most impacted by pollution in general. Air, water, soil, you name it. And so I'm really excited to talk with you all. Admittedly, so I feel like I need to share a little bit about my personal story. Admittedly, I have not always considered myself an environmentalist, as many people of color, I think, have found themselves outside of the mainstream environmental movement, or not necessarily seeing a place for themselves in the movement. So when I first came to Green for All, I actually came to help a friend implement her vision while I considered my next professional steps. But within weeks of starting the job, I found myself on the ground in Flint, Michigan. I think she had an agenda and knew that I cared about racial and economic justice. So she sent me to Flint, Michigan, and I was hearing stories of moms who couldn't even bathe their kids in bath water without their skin cracking and bleeding, who were realizing that their kids would never be the same. You know, their behaviors, their attitudes, their whole personalities had changed. Their physical bodies had changed from being poisoned with lead. And as a mom, you know, and I had a 3-year-old at the time who's now 4, just feeling like, to feel so helpless, right, that you can't do anything. And that's when it really hit for me that these big polluters are polluting our communities, and they think that it's okay. And they especially think it's okay because it's just Black and brown communities, right? Like that it's predominantly being burdened, or the burden of it is being shouldered largely by low-income communities and communities of color who society sees as throwaway in some times. So it's not okay, and we have the opportunity to do something. So I'm excited that I've stayed at Green for All now and now lead the organization. And you know, I just wanted to share that we decided to dip our toe into the transportation sector work after having an opportunity to collaborate with the 2 other organizations that you're going to hear from today. Chispa, who we went and worked with the Chispa chapter in Las Vegas to help kick off a clean school bus campaign that they had in 2017 that just really fired us up. And then talking with Holmes Hummel of Clean Energy Works about the tremendous opportunity that we have and that you'll hear about to transition our entire bus fleets across the country and really make a huge dent on both climate and health, and transportation justice and mobility access and so many things that we wanted to contribute in a more major way. And so I'll say this, the transportation sector is the #1 contributor of climate change now in the United States. And that pollution, like most pollution, is concentrated in underserved communities. So where our organization is based in Oakland, California, there are neighborhoods that reek with the constant smell of gasoline, and it's a smell that never goes away. Busy freeways and highways on all sides of the neighborhood, coupled with the diesel trucks that idle through their streets on their way to the port, overwhelm these communities and the very air that they breathe. And so for families who live there, the decision to let their kids play outside comes with a knowing that they'll be exposing their kids to, let's say, the health equivalent of smoking cigarettes all day. Not something you would typically let your toddler do. But that's what these tailpipes are. They're like cigarettes. And the diesel buses that people use just to get to work or to get to school are like refineries on wheels when it comes to our health. And so we're excited to launch that. We are launching our Fuel Change campaign. We're calling it Fuel Change because we think that all of us as individual actors in this and members of society need to be the change. And so we want to fuel the change. And literally, we want to change the fuel. And so we aim to mobilize a movement of people across the country to fight climate change and improve health by bringing clean, zero-emission electric buses to underserved neighborhoods, along with other clean transit solutions. And so, the bus piece is important because in the environmental community, when we talk about electrification, there's a lot of emphasis on electric vehicles. So for individual drivers who can get into an EV, and how do we, get more people into EVs, which is important work. But the public buses and heavier duty freight are actually impacting our communities quite a bit, and there needs to be an equal amount of weight given to those issues. And so one of our goals is to get local transit agencies to commit to zero-emission electric buses. Just a bit of context, 60% of transit buses and 95% of school buses are run on diesel, which come with a number of serious health impacts, high rates of asthma, obviously, cardiovascular disease, impaired lung development, especially in kids, preterm and low birth weight infants, childhood leukemia, premature death, serious things, right? And so by transitioning these heavier duty, buses to be clean zero emission buses, we'll be doing a lot to not just tackle the climate issues, but actually improve community health. So that's basically what we're trying to do, and we would be thrilled to have you all join us as partners in the cities where you live, and so we're excited about this conversation. I'd be happy to share a little bit more about what we have coming up in our Fuel Change campaign, but I think first it would be good to hear next from Holmes about sort of the nuts and bolts of what a local campaign like this would look like, and just sort of how you would get involved in engaging your local transit agency.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. I almost started crying when you were talking about the impact of these buses. And to your point about what the initiatives you're working on now, I've made a note. And when we get toward around 8:25, 8:30 about the next steps, you can have the floor to talk about that and potential partnerships and what that could look like, and what can be done to support your efforts. So now I am going to turn it over to Dr. Holmes Hummel to talk about the financing of electric buses, which on the face of it are up to twice as expensive as diesel or gas buses, and most systems that are school bus systems, local transit systems really just don't have that kind of cash laying around. So Holmes, take it away. Uh-oh, Holmes, are you muted? Hold on. If you are speaking,
We could see you, can't hear you.
Okay.
I think Holmes trying to speak.
I think Holmes is trying to speak. So let me, all right, hold on. To hit the unmute. Okay. Holmes, you're unmuted. So I'm not sure. Maybe I will.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear.
Hey, I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted. So you're communicating through your phone. I was confused. Anyway, take it away. We can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. Hi, friends. I'm really feeling privileged to join a call with this number of participants and with the leadership that we have here. I was having dinner last night with a cousin of mine who told me as a mother that her kids in 2050 will be younger than she is now. And that just made it hit home for me that we're not going to leave these problems to be inherited by a next generation, but we really own them today. And I'm proud to be supporting all of the organizers that have called in from the post that I hold at Clean Energy Works. It's a nonprofit organization founded after a period of service at the Department of Energy, where I was serving as the senior policy advisor during the Recovery Act era. And during that time, we put a lot of money into new clean energy technologies, but not everybody benefited. And questions about economic inclusion lingered for a long time, damaging the prospects of participation and therefore expansion of the constituency that could support a climate action platform. So the leadership at Green for All and Chispa has been really important for Clean Energy Works in terms of setting our own priorities of how we're devoting attention to an aspect of a problem that affects both transportation and energy efficiency and clean energy in our local communities. And that has to do with accessing capital and money at scale to get the solutions that we need. So Michelle just introduced me as a person who works on problems with our Clean Energy Works team to remove barriers to success for local campaigners that know that their demands are in line with what our political environment and our science urgently calls for, but they're running into barriers from decision makers who say, that's a really great idea, but do you have any idea how much that costs and where do you think we're possibly going to get the money for that? So we've learned a lot from bus transit campaigners that are winning in the United States. And they're starting out by demanding, first of all, targets from people who know that we cannot tolerate a future that continues to accumulate fossil fuel assets in our local infrastructure. After winning from decision makers agreement that this is just not acceptable, everyone needs to take a first step forward. And so winning the victory of getting that first clean transit bus into the community is a victory that every chapter on this call will eventually be able to claim. The question is, how soon? So we tried to accelerate the pace at which you can claim that first victory by sharing success stories from other places and connecting you with resources that will help your own decision makers get to yes. But even after getting that first bus or first few buses, we still need to be able to visualize what it means to go from the science fair scale experiment of clean energy buses in our community to never buying another diesel bus again. And that means buying all electric and celebrating the first year where the school district or the transit district is able to buy every bus that they buy new, clean. Even after that point, believe it or not, it can take the distance of time between a child in kindergarten and their graduation year to get the last diesel bus out of the fleet. No joke, 12 years. That adds to the urgency of getting started now, because every year we delay is another year in the future that we're still driving around our communities with these polluting vehicles that we know better could be replaced today. One of the challenges, though, is that the school buses that are running on electricity and can run with zero emission electricity grid power, if supplied that way, they really cost a lot more. They cost like triple the cost of a diesel bus today, though that difference is going down. The good news is, though, that they do cost less to operate over time, so they do save money over time. So the big trick is to figure out how to get through that first cost barrier and to assure a school board member that's concerned about allocating money between teacher pay and textbooks and transportation that it's possible for us to make improvements in all three without sacrifice. And that's important also to avoiding the wedges that opponents will want to drive between people who are campaigning for both better education and for a better environment. What we do at Clean Energy Works is draw in the utilities because they are actually good allies on a campaign for clean transit. But some people might have experience actually facing off with their local utilities, demanding more from their utilities than the utilities are able to give today on things like greening the grid or accelerating their smart grid investments. Clean Energy Works helps equip you with a good news narrative that you can bring to decision makers, not just in your school board or your local transportation department, but how they can go with you as compelling messengers to the utility to give the utility a good news message about their part in a future that runs on 100% clean electricity for 100% clean transit. I don't think that I want to delve into the weeds or the details of how the utility's investment in the onboard batteries and charging stations can help knock down that first cost barrier, but leave it to the Q&A and perhaps a subsequent call for people who want to go to those nuts and bolts for how those transaction paths will work. But I want to assure you, as I transition our call to the women and leaders at Chispa, that I'm calling you today from a visit to Sacramento, a capital city and a state that has abundant resources for a clean energy economy. And I want you to know that this year, their Clean School Bus Fund is oversubscribed by 500%. They're $500 million short on the money that would be required to fill the demand from all the disadvantaged communities that filed paperwork this year saying they wanted their clean electric buses. We're basically kicking 1,000 electric buses down the road. They won't be bought this year. So this is the challenge, to invite and encourage all of the mothers in all of the communities who know that there are pathways to getting the answers we need if we bring in the allies from all of the aligned interests, including the electric power sector, that can help overcome the first cost barriers that are currently keeping us from our goals. Michelle, I hope I've served your purposes in supporting the call from Green for All for more action on this front. And I'm very honored by the invitation to support all of the mothers organized by Mothers Out Front and the allies at Chispa who can help build the call to action. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm just so relieved it's all being recorded, so I don't have to take notes. So I'm going to turn it over now to Fernando Cazares, the National Director for Chispa. And Fernando, just so you know, we're a few minutes behind, but I want you all to take the time that you need because we are all really looking forward to hearing the story of Chispa and the Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign. So take it away.
Great. Can folks hear me? Great. So I'm Fernando. I'm based in Washington, D.C. And just to piggyback on Michelle's point, I have two nieces. They're now 13 and 11. They live in Bakersfield, California, which is one of the most polluted counties in Kern County in California. So the work for me is also personal, and for many of you, it's also personal. And you'll hear later today from one of our Chispa mothers who's organizing for personal reasons as well. So as was said, just want to give you a little bit of what Chispa is. So Chispa basically means spark in Spanish. So our vision is that grassroots organizing in the 6 states in which we're located is going a movement of Latinos and other communities of color, typically talked about as the frontline communities of climate change. We are based in Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Connecticut, and Maryland. So 6 states currently, and we're looking at expanding to 2 more states this year. We are the grassroots organizing program of the Legal Conservation Voters. So within that, our model is one in which the voices of Latinos and other communities of color through grassroots organizing, power building, and accountability are going to be seen and heard by elected officials and also polluters in their own communities So we do typical community organizing with a campaign structure. So our communities are organized around clean energy, renewable portfolio standards, access to the outdoors. And now, for the last 2.5 years, since 2017, we have been organizing around 6 states around what we call the Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign. So when we were looking in 2017, we were asking ourselves how we can generate a campaign that could get us all working together across our 6 states, that can really build the grassroots capacity and grassroots maturity of our organizers and our promotoras in a clear demand with a clear timeline, with a clear target. And it's something that was also personal to them. One of the points that I'll mention is that there are 25 million children who are transported every day to their school by a school bus. That's larger than they're the single largest transit ridership in the country. And school buses there are about 480,000 school buses. So that's significantly larger than mass transit. So for the last 1.5 years, we've been organizing. We made demands of the governors. Our organizers collected petitions and pledges, both paper pledges and online pledges. We also used digital organizing, so people were able to text their demand to their governors, and we're also able to do traditional rallies and traditional lobby days in the capitals. But don't take it from me. What I would like to do now is pass the microphone over to Ms. Berta Robledo, who's one of our lead promotoras in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, Catherine?
Can you hear us? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Berta Robledo. I am widow. I have 4 sons and 4 grandchildren. I live in Vegas from 1985.
Sí.
Okay.
¿Cómo se involucró?
Te digo en español.
Sí.
Yo soy promotora de Chispa, Nevada.
Sí. Usted comience y yo le traduzco.
Ok.
Okay. Sí.
Pero
sí.
eso me dijiste que hiciera pausa. Yo soy promotora de Chispa, Nevada. Fui a la primera graduación de promotores y me gustó lo que hacen. Y por eso me involucré en esto.
So I'm a promoter, which is what we call our volunteers who've gone through a leadership training. After 5 or more shifts, they're able to do this long leadership training that's super intense, but they learn about civics. So she got to do the training class. And after watching the graduation ceremony of the first class that graduated at Chispa, she learned that she really liked what Chispa did, and that's why she got involved.
Yo he trabajado en recoger firmas para que el gobernador de Nevada cambie los autobuses escolares de los niños, porque hay muchos niños enfermos de asma. Los autobuses hoy en día son de diésel y nosotros estamos trabajando para que los cambien a eléctricos. El estado de Nevada tiene 25 millones que le ganó a la Volkswagen de una demanda.
So I helped collect 4,000 signatures that were turned into the governor of Nevada. We want to change the school buses from diesel to zero emission electric using the funds off the Volkswagen mitigation settlement, and the state of Nevada is going to be receiving $25 million. ¿Sí?
Nosotros hemos levantado 4,000 firmas y se las llevamos a las oficinas del gobernador. Y hemos trabajado tocando puertas para levantar firmas para que nosotros ya se me olvidó.
Yo sigo con la parte y tú lees.
Okay.
So we helped to collect the 4,000 signatures and we went directly to the governor's office to go turn it in. Yeah.
Ajá. Y hemos ido a tocar puertas.
Y vamos a
a
todos los eventos de la comunidad.
Ajá.
Okay.
Y vamos a todos los eventos que nos invitan y nosotros ponemos una mesa de Chispa Nevada para levantar firmas.
So a lot of the ways that we go to collect signatures is we go to door knocking. So we go door to door and letting our community members know about the Clean Buses Healthy Niños campaign. And we also go to tabling events where we talk to our community. So everywhere that we can share the information on the Clean Buses for Healthy Niños campaign. That's the way that we start collecting signatures so we can let our governor know that this is something that we support. You did? Okay, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. ¿Qué otra cosa puedo decir?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Some really impressive organizing leadership and tactics in that story of the Clean Buses for Healthy Niños. Thank you so much for sharing and for translating. So I will now turn it over to Jennifer Rogers Brown, Mothers Out Front leader on Long Island, whose team is beginning to launch a local electric school bus campaign. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you, everybody. That was wonderful to hear these stories. I'm on Long Island, and my group, we live really in Huntington, Long Island. We have 5 active core members. We had some success last year in our town of Huntington. We've been pushing them to move towards a commitment for 100% renewable energy for our town. We ended up kind of moving them towards settling on a climate smart communities commitment for now. And now we've begun this campaign around transitioning our school bus fleet to electric vehicles. And we've been very much in the research phase and investigating how we're going to handle this because we have 8 school districts in our town. And each of our core members live in different districts. So we've chosen one district of South Huntington, and our goal is to get the district to commit to transition its fleet to electric vehicle as they retire each vehicle. So as Holmes said, getting that first one done, to get that first vehicle transitioned is what our first goal is. And we'll start with the focus on getting that commitment for the one bus transition after the first one is retired. We hosted a small house party that included Seki and Sarah Smiles, who you'll hear from next, plus leaders of a South Huntington Girl Scouts group. So we're investigating different ways we could build some capacity around this. And I'm going to turn it over to Billy, who's also in our group, to talk, mention a couple key things that we found and to leave you with a couple questions that we hope you can help us with.
Hi. We're still in research mode, but we discovered a number of interesting things. First of all, in our school districts, they don't exclusively own the buses. In other words, they own the buses, but they supplement the bus use with outside bus companies that are private. So we may have 2 places to go to convince people to go electric. I also found out an electric bus company is coming here with an electric bus on March or April. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people in to see this demonstration. It's really exciting. And we have last year, another company came and we didn't know at all about it. And we've posted the video of the meeting on our Facebook page so anyone can take a look at it. I think our biggest thing is the range limitation and the financing. So that's the pieces we really need to know about. Thanks.
That was excellent. Thank you, Jennifer and Billy. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah Smiley, who lives in the Lower Hudson Valley and is, again, working with a team, working to launch an electric school bus campaign. Sarah?
Hi, thanks, Neely. So my team represents a few different villages along the Hudson River, just north of New York City. And we have 6 school districts. 5 of which are under one transportation department. So my teammate Bonnie Mazza organized a meeting yesterday with the director of transportation for those 5 districts, and our teammate Katie Hyams and I both attended with her as part of our fact-finding portion research gathering. And it was really interesting. He was very positive about electric school buses. We have a very receptive community, I think, to sustainability initiatives. And he also pointed out that he wants to be innovative and he wants to be the first to do these things. And we also live close to White Plains, which has a pilot program that they're doing with the utility company, where they have 5 electric school buses. So we're able to point to that as a reference for our districts. And it really came down to, for the person we met with yesterday, what the bottom line is. So he wants to know how it's cost effective over the lifespan of the bus. And so we were encouraged because we feel like if we can bring back case studies, which we're hoping to gather through this process, to show that it would be cost effective, and if we can bring back a financing mechanism that the school district can leverage, we think that will be a great opportunity. He did push it back to us. He kept pointing to, well, you should talk to state legislators to get more money for the district. So we think that might be a slight hurdle to overcome, but we think if we come armed with some really positive stories and information, we'll have a lot of people who'd be really receptive to it. And our next step is I'm going to reach out to the superintendent of the other school district in our team and see if we can get a meeting there as well. So really excited to move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so there are a lot of questions in the chat, and a lot are pretty technical and with factoids and fleet managers and things like that. And so what we're going to do, instead of focusing on those for this large of a call, because that information is available, but what is important on this call, and I think will be incredibly valuable, is really starting to talk about the strategy of developing a winnable campaign, the nuts and bolts, the questions. Again, we're saving the chat and we're recording this call. So the nuts and bolts will circulate the answers to those questions. Tomorrow might be a little ambitious, early next week. But to really dig in a little on the strategy of developing a winnable local campaign. So does anyone have any questions about that? Please do put it in the chat. Or Holmes, I was going to ask if you would like to jump in and sort of get us started.
Neely, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, thanks to each and every one of the speakers. That was really remarkable. I wanted to say a couple of words about strategy and in response to some of the things on the chat. First of all of the people I've heard from have done one of the most difficult things, which is to find out who's in charge. And that is like step one. It's like, find out who's in charge around here. And you might be amazed to learn who the transportation director is in your community. A lot of times they are people who themselves are struggling to be empowered inside their own organization. In rural areas, they may be physical education teachers that are also part-time responsible for the school bus fleet. You will find allies in the transportation directors. You might also find that when you reach people who have control over the budgets for those transportation directors, they are eager to send you to their decision makers and have you carry water for them to those places. But here's where I want to caution, because I'm not sure that doing what we've always done will get us where we need to go. And in particular, when we're talking about transitioning the entire energy economy, treating it as if it's some sort of grants program is not on the scale of what we're talking about. Sure, we can always use grants money, but actually the amount of time that we spend trying to win grant money will guarantee that we only end up with a tooth fix that we need, not real 2x4s. So here is where you can harness the interest of those decision makers to go with you to the places where large amounts of money are decided every day in the actual investment streams that are paying for the equipment that are trolling around the neighborhoods that you have. So there is a yes and here. And for the campaigners that we've already heard on this call, who were challenged by the decision makers they found to bring back the answer themselves, that is a sure sign that Clean Energy Works and the allies on this call are ready to help you move through that conversation and not accept it as your burden. You're not volunteer material for professional services to do these types of things. Those are questions that go to the kind of specialists that they need to be working with, and we can help you move back around that conversation. So Clean Energy Works, we actually produce cost effectiveness analysis for electric bus fleets, for transit fleets, and for school bus fleets. And we do that with real industry consultants that can stack up the costs and the savings and show that we're better off moving now and not waiting till later. So those are the types of things that come in the campaign planning, where you can lay out your milestones and then draw in where you need certain key pieces of information in order to break through the barriers. I know there's lots of Q&A in the chat, and I pledge that Clean Energy Works will make as many contributions as we can to the draft responses that will be circulated after the call.
Thank you, Holmes. I am learning more and more every 15 seconds. So does anyone have anything they'd like to ask, I guess, relevant to what Holmes just laid out? You can put it in the chat. I think, well, so the chat's a little quiet right now, but one question that occurred to me, Holmes, as you were talking about the kind of a cost-effective analysis that you all can provide, when, in terms of how does that work? How would that, maybe this is a nuts and bolts question, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. With groups on the ground, right? Say we're working with a school district in the Hudson Valley, and they need this cost-effective analysis. Like, does Clean Energy Works have the kind of capacity to respond to that? Is there a cost for it? Sort of, what does that look like?
Neely, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Good. I had to cut off this video, but I want you to know that Clean Energy Works currently can produce the cost-effectiveness analysis with the utility industry analyst partners that we have cultivated. These are graduates from the MIT Transit Lab that help us crunch the numbers. And it is not free for us. We have to raise and spend on the order of $10,000 for each utility service area that we work with. And for me, that's a lot of money for us to raise and spend for, if you think about every different utility district in the country where this needs to occur. So we're doing two things about that. One is we're challenging the people to go first, that we can cost share. And in the first cases, we are able to pay for everything. But as we move on, we're asking for the cost share because these are multi-million-dollar investments. So what we're trying to do is move a multi-million-dollar grant need to a multi-million-dollar investment plan, one that allows the school district or the city to move forward without waiting for somebody to come through with a government spending program, because we need business as usual to become clean transit as usual. So Clean Energy Works can work with the early adopters and sponsor some of these financial analysis. And as we get loaded up and piled on and we're oversubscribed, we can work out the cost sharing arrangements. But the savings to any school district or transit district are enormous when you think about the situation where everyone's spending lots of money trying to write grants to get their next battery versus being able to move ahead with their utility at full speed.
Okay, Yeah, I was sort of processing that. So I guess to understand you clearly, you're asking the school districts to cost share because of the savings down the road from an electric transit fleet. Is that right? I think you might.
Neely, we do not need a school district to be the sponsor. We need any source of funding, and in an offline conversation, any group of campaigners here want to go in with us together, we would like to go to some of the biggest funders in this country and say, don't make us go and look for this money one little school district at a time. Give us a pot of money that we can do 10, 20, 30 analyses so that there's infrastructure and a network of campaigners for clean school buses all across the country can work together to present the evidence to their decision makers. What we do need from a transportation director at a school district is cooperation. Cooperation is even better than cash in a lot of cases. And some of the key things that we need in terms of cooperation include basic information, just the data. How many school buses? How far do they go? How much diesel fuel do they buy every single year already? And for those on the call today who've highlighted the kinds of concerns that a very earnest transportation director can put up, like, gosh, I don't think that technology is fit for my fleet because I've heard that those buses don't go far enough. We need their cooperation to be curious. Well, what are the bus route links? And by the way, they're going to vary. Some of them will be as short as 40 miles. Some of them might be 140 miles. So we can get into a conversation with that transportation director and say, look, we're not going to try to electrify your longest routes first, but we're not going to wait to take the diesel out of the shortest ones. Let's get started. So we need both cash and cooperation. We can work with you with cash from any sort, but cooperation and good rapport and diplomacy, that's where the campaigner's genius, right where you are and the relationships that you have, are incredibly valuable. The kind of thing money can't buy.
That yeah, that's really helpful. Like that, those two pieces of information, like I guess what sort of the expertise that Clean Energy Works is bringing to the call, and then what is really needed from people on the ground rooted in those communities, first and foremost. So let's see, I don't know, Holmes, if you're looking at the chat, let's see, I'm scrolling through the questions quickly. Jennifer asks, at what point in the campaign do we approach the bus company and utilities to get them on board? Or do we leave it entirely to the school district to make the commitment and demand the change?
Well, two things. The school district and the kids who ride those buses are the ones to make the demands. Really. I mean, it's the parents and the children who have such a voice of authority. And here I cede quickly to Green for All and Chispa. These are the leaders who have been leading the way. But with that win, the first win being just the demand, you're inevitably going to find that people will say, that is a really expensive demand. And that is where a conversation about financing helps us pole vault over that barrier and move past that blockade. And Clean Energy Works is a source of technical assistance and allied support to help the campaigners where you are, answers those questions, and find the allies to bring them to the conversation where the amount of money that you need can be invested with and through your utility, not just taking money from textbooks and teachers.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was going to ask, I was going to say one of the strategies that our 6 states are going to be implementing is to Holmes' point is to demand that their school district, their school boards adopt resolutions and policies that will transition all their diesel buses. And this is something that we're also coming up with, whether is it a 10-year period, is it a 15-year period. So our job as grassroots organizers, as advocate, is to create the political momentum and the political demand for this thing to happen. We don't need to be the experts, the financial experts, the technical experts. That's what these folks get paid for. That's what they're school board members for. So if there's nobody demanding it, if there's no policy behind it, we're always going to be, styled by these technical questions, which are legitimate, but they're not necessarily ours to answer. We're here to, make the case why this is the right thing, and we're here to create the political momentum through parents and other political, forces to get them to adopt these policies. So, there is precedent where large transit agencies like LA, the Metro and the city of LA already committed to go all electric by 2025. So that was not because the Metro board decided it was the right thing to do. It was because there was a coalition of advocates from the experts, from grassroots, from environmental justice who showed up to the board and made their demand. And there are experts behind those agencies that it's their job to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's where I think Green for All can be really helpful too, is on building that broad public support and the political pressure, if you will, so that when you and whoever you take with you to the agency meetings are showing up and asking for these things, they know they're already dealing with the issue in the press, and that there's sort of this mounting momentum. And that's really where Green for All's strength is. Just to give you an example, in August, I guess it was 2017 already, my gosh. But we worked with the Las Vegas, with Chispa, Nevada in Las Vegas to kick off the Clean Buses campaign there, trying to get Volkswagen money initially for school buses. And we were able to, by bringing our video services and working with our media partners at Now This, take that kickoff campaign that they were already organizing and bringing people to, and capture the right content with the right messengers. We did have van go, and so we got helped with the pitch, not gonna lie. But we were able to get Now This to do a video on it where we saw 1.5 million views in the first 5 days that video went out. And so to the extent that there are ways that we can bring greater visibility to what you are doing, and help propel the campaign through our media and communications work, that's something that we certainly can offer. And then the other piece that I wanted to say was, I saw in the chat, Patrick said, imagine the first, the kids that get to ride the first electric bus at their school or whatever. He said bragging rights for life. And I thought to myself, yeah, if they saw it that way, right? Like, how do we make riding electric buses a cool thing and for everyone that they resonate? So I think, today, like for me, I drive where I live is, you have to have a car. But when I get in the car, there's a sense that, traffic accidents are a risk. That if there's an accident, it's going to affect your commute time. There's you see them on the side of the road. There's some sense that that's a safety concern when you get on the road. There's not the same level of urgency around transportation pollution, that is an actual health and safety risk. And that when we're having our kids just stand outside waiting for the school bus, that we should actually feel some type of way about that. And so I think that's what we see our work as being through our content and communications campaigns, to make that shift. So we're raising the consciousness of parents, of communities who are impacted, of young people, that there's something wrong about this picture because we have a better way to do it, and to ask for that better way, that we deserve that cleaner, greener solution. So just, to circle back a little bit about what we have coming up, one thing Green for All is working on right now is a music video for the Fuel Change campaign. And the idea is exactly that, to communicate the public health impacts of transportation pollution, and the need to go electric and transition our transportation sector, but in a cool, fun way. I promise it won't be cheesy. it will not be cheesy. And actually, I'll drop a link to one of the artists or two of the artists, if I can grab the links quickly, that we've selected for this thing. We had a competition in December and January where we put out a call to rappers and hip hop artists and singer-songwriters, spoken word poets, you know, to learn about the transportation issues. Some attended a lyric writing workshop, and then basically submit a verse for a chance to be featured. And so we have some amazing artists who all come from directly impacted communities. Young people, one guy just graduated from high school and, you know, has a personal story about how asthma is affecting him in Oakland. And so that will be another sort of educational tool, but also experience to the extent we can do live events and things like that that bring a more diverse constituency to this work.
That's amazing. And as I, you know, to sort of sum up what I've heard from what you just said, Michelle, and Holmes, what you were saying, and Fernando, what you've been adding to is like, and what Mothers Out Front, quite frankly, says all the time about climate change. Like, we need the political will. And what we have, like, I feel like we're sitting on a gold mine. And I, for lack of a better analogy, you know, it's 8:30 at night for me, so I'm a little fuzzy. But in terms of a gold mine of mothers, grandmothers, and allies who can be that voice pushing decision makers. And when the decision makers say, oh, but we are sitting, you know, with Green for All and the work of Clean Energy Works, we can access those answers. And so I think, so it's 8:28 and we're supposed to go until 8:45, but I'm thinking now might be a really good shift to hear Michelle from you, Fernando from you, Berta and Catherine as well. You know, what do you see as next steps that could move this forward?
Well, I have ideas, so I guess I'll jump in. So, you know, I mentioned this music video that we're working on, and so we're working to launch that in March and want to organize some watch parties around it to bring more folks into this work. The first step is raising, you know, like awareness of this and teaching other people about the issue so that we can cultivate advocates for these local campaigns. And so that's the first thing. We're hosting a series of webinars about the rollout strategy for that, and we'll host a training for anyone who signs up to host a watch party. So anyone on this call who wants to host a watch party in your area, that would be phenomenal. And then we can send folks from our lists in those areas too to your watch party. And so that's one simple way to help both recruit for a local campaign if you are interested in working on these issues, while also getting more information. The other thing is, hang on, let me go back to my notes. I know there were a few. So we're going to work on a getting started guide. So for those who haven't engaged on bus electrification issues in the past, to have some guidance around how to get started, including an FAQ that would answer some of these questions that continuously come up around the cost, around range, around, you know, the maintenance, and like just the things that we can help to answer so that folks don't feel like they showed up and now the agency just bombarded them with a bunch of questions they didn't expect, right? And so some of that. So for those of you who are really interested in that, it'd be helpful and valuable to have a few set of eyes on those so we get some feedback from those of you who would use a toolkit like this, so before we deploy it more broadly. For anyone who's just loves to geek out and wants to dive more into research and you have a little bit of time and want to take a chunk, for example, going deeper on range or going deeper on the question of what if your district is contracting with a private company, and so, you know, some solutions around that, or even pulling together some case studies. I think that there are ways that we can co-create this resource, and we're happy to just sort of serve as project coordinator, if you will, to make sure that it all rolls into one thing and that the sum of the parts are better than the whole, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. So that, and then the other thing that is helpful for like the communication side of it is gathering stories of impact. And we do have a great platform that we've developed that you can find at My Climate Cost. Let me write this into the chat, myclimatecost.org. And it's a story share platform where people can record a story in video format, like from their computer or from their cell phone. They can upload something that they've already done, or they can write in their story. And so we regularly collect these on the impacts of climate pollution, but we want to start sourcing more of these from transportation as a source of climate pollution, to be able to do all sorts of other content and help like with this narrative change work. So that's another thing. But I think the most important is like figuring out a way for us to have a regular feedback loop so that we can learn from the work that you're doing on the ground, and stay coordinated to identify like where we can bring our collective resources together to help get more of these campaigns over the finish line and see more wins.
So it looks like you've got at least 3 watch parties, that three commitments to watch parties.
I just saw the chat.
In Atlanta, in Rochester, and Boston. Well, Jamaica Plain. So anyone else want to throw a watch party and put it in the chat?
I was gonna ask Catherine if she and Berta want to share what they're planning to do in Las Vegas in this year to push the campaign, and I'll share something else.
Yeah.
Berta, ¿tiene algo que quiera agregar?
Bueno, yo quisiera invitar a todos los padres de Las Vegas, Nevada, para que le hablen al nuevo gobernador para que él nos cambie los autobuses. Los padres de los niños tienen mucho derecho a hablarle al gobernador para que nos cambien los autobuses, porque hay muchos niños enfermos de asma.
Okay. So what she thinks is now that Nevada has a new governor is making sure that the parents are calling our new governor to make sure that he's informed about the campaign and that he supports it fully, to make sure that parents with kids with asthma are sharing their stories. So it motivates him to make a change towards our campaign. And I guess one of the things that like I was really thinking about with the Clean Buses campaign that we're doing is making sure that we're really, when we collect the stories, that we're really promoting it. We have a lot of people that we talk to day to day that are affected, and then you only have a couple of stories that you hear. So it's making sure that people's voices are being heard, because it's not just about changing a school bus, it affects people. So you need to put a face every single time it's a new face, it's a new story, so that more people can connect to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing we'll add is that a couple of our goals this year are to engage the mass media, in the states where we are doing the campaigns, but also the big national outlets. What we've seen on the last couple of articles, the folks who get highlighted are the school district, the manufacturer, a local or federal, representative who's making a pilot happen. But there is no story about the children. There isn't a story about the parents or the communities that live along the route, or the communities that live along the school bus yards. So the impact of what all this diesel emission is having on communities is definitely not part of the picture. So we're planning to engage our communications resources so that the next articles that come out at the national, regional level have an impact of both the communities that are suffering, but also the mothers and the youth that are actually organizing to make this happen in the 6 states that we're in, but also other states. We're looking to work with Clean Energy Works to advance the conversation with school districts and utilities in the 6 states that we're located. We are also working with New York, Michigan, and New Jersey. to explore the opportunity to leverage the Volkswagen settlement into larger fleet-wide opportunities rather than just one pilot at a time. So hopefully this year we'll have a proof of concept around this public utility school district agreement. And I mean, I would also say use, letters to the editor. One thing about, I used to work for an elected, so I always tell people that one of the things that electeds, celebrities in Hollywood, always care about is their image, and they look at their image based on whether or not they get coverage on the national television or news articles. And now with the rise of social media, they're tracking their social media. So always think of yourself as somebody who can directly make your elected look good or look bad, or put him on the spot and just say, why are you not advocating for clean electric school buses? Why are you letting our children be polluted with diesel school buses? And so just think of yourself as an advocate, one step at a time. A letter to the editor, a tweet, go to your school board and ask those questions.
That's incredibly important. Thank you so much for that, Fernando. There's a question in the chat that ties into what you were saying and what Catherine and Berta were talking about in terms of stories. And I'd love to hear Michelle, Catherine, Berta, Fernando, in regards to, do kids and parents easily make the connection between their health and the buses? Do they know? Do they might smell bad or see the diesel fumes? But is there that connection made that is easy to, for lack of a better word, capitalize on and use to bring folks in to advocate and push these campaigns and policies forward?
I'm hoping that Catherine and Berta will answer that. If they don't, I can jump in. I'll just share that, several of our promotores, end up becoming our organizers in the States. So we have a story of an organizer in Connecticut. He was a community leader and can talk about his experience riding a school bus and why he just chose to take action around it. In Arizona, our organizers are also coming from the community and our leaders are coming from the community. So they can make the connection about their children's asthma rates or their community's respiratory illnesses. And they can also, this is an interesting one, they're also looking around related land use issues, and they're also asking themselves a question about why aren't there enough trees and greenery in our communities to at least buffer us from the emissions or extreme heat. And they're also starting to question about where these school yards, the parking lots for the school buses, why are they located in low-income communities of color in their neighborhoods? So I'm not a parent, but Catherine and Berta, do you guys want to answer that question too?
So Berta's running out of the room right now. But one of the things that usually the teenage kids will realize it because they go to their doctor's visits and the doctors will be like, what are you exposed to? But when it comes to the younger kids, the parents will be like, I don't know, this is what we do, this is what his life is like. And then the doctors will be like, oh, maybe the buses. So that's one of the things that we see is parents are starting to associate it when they talk to their doctors, and the doctors let them know. So they're like, you know what? I can't drive my kid to school. I can't walk them to school. It's too far. So unfortunately, my kid is going to have to keep driving this or riding this bus that's going to continue making them sick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you talk to kids who are directly impacted. A little bit of information goes a long way. So when we had the chance to go to Las Vegas, we met with a 13-year-old who, talked about how when he would go out to the PE yard, that he would often get triggered and have an asthma attack, or that when the school bus came, and he didn't, make the connection necessarily to the power plant without someone saying that, hey, the power plants have X effect, right? But he can see the power plant from the schoolyard where they play. And so that made sense to him, right? That he knows he goes outside and this health event regularly occurs, but he may not have understood why, and that the proximity to that power plant likely has an effect. But when you make that connection, then it makes sense. It's a light bulb moment. We had the similar experiences when we hosted our lyric writing workshop in Oakland. There were people who, in some part because there was a financial incentive, right, for the winners of the contest and whoever we'd feature to pay them for their work, showed up, and not necessarily because they understood all about the environmental issue. But when they came, because they're from Oakland and are highly impacted by transportation pollution, simple, things that we would share about tailpipe pollution, what comes out of those tailpipes, and also just like the visuals, right, of people, Mike actually from our organizing director shared this example, and it resonated with a lot of people in the room, which was that when you wear a white tee outside in some of these communities, by the end of the day, it looks a little tinged. That is because of the pollution, and so so those things make it real because they can see it. They may not have ever understood it. Like, it's just a thing, right? It's just normal, unfortunately. But when you make the connection, it really is a light bulb moment. And everyone in the room realized, like, oh, wow, almost all of them had asthma. And almost all of them, had some experience like that. They were like, oh, yeah, my t-shirt does it all the time. Or, yeah, I noticed, the outside of our house gets dirty. Soot, things like that.
So that's really, really eye-opening and helpful, I think. And what's so important, and the power I see in this campaign and these, national, local levels, is being able to offer people a path to fix it, right? That is doable and achievable. And so we are close to finishing. And I would love to take the last couple of minutes to give everyone an opportunity to share in the chat one word describing how you felt this call, how you're feeling in regards to this call, what your experience was. And also, what is a concrete next step you plan to take? I think we're up to like 8 or 9 or 10 watch parties across the country. And so if folks will just take the last minute or two, and I'm going to participate as well, because I have some next steps for me in my head. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for joining. Michelle, Holmes, Catherine, Berta, Fernando, thank you all so much. This has been incredibly powerful. Would she like to say something, Catherine?
Yeah, she wants to say something.
Okay.
Cuando yo voy a levantar firmas, me preguntan que por qué estoy haciendo eso. Entonces yo les digo, porque hay niños enfermos de asma, y me dicen, yo no tengo niños, yo no soy casada. Espérese, mi hermana tiene un niño enfermo de asma y viaja en el autobús escolar, y me ha dicho mi hermana que se ha puesto más enfermo. Pero esa...
Una pausa. Déjame le digo. So she says when she goes to tabling events and she asks people to fill out like the little petition sheet, they'll ask like what it's about, and she's like, oh, do you know someone who has asthma? And they're like, you know what, I don't have asthma, but my sister's kid has asthma, and they told me that when they ride the school bus, that's when they get sicker.
Esto me lo han dicho más de 1,000 gentes cuando yo les pido que me firmen este papel aquí. Ellos me lo han dicho.
So she said like the thousands of people that she's talked to at the different events, that's what they have told her, is that they've already made that connection between asthma and the school buses.
Eso es.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I think you know, you have several dozen people on this call and more who aren't on this call right now, willing to take action to change that in effective ways. So with that, I'll keep the webinar open for a few more minutes just to give people a chance to type in the chat. And thank you all so much. And look for an email, a follow-up email with questions. We've got a lot of information to organize and send out. There's a thirst for knowledge, and also the link to this recording that will be made available. So thank you all, and I am super excited for the next steps and to see you again. Have a lovely evening.